49ers regular season is over. They beat the Cardinals at home in week 18, which leaves us still undecided in who we're going to play in week 1, the super wild card weekend, I think is what the NFL calls it. Rod, we got to see the Niners beat up on a very injured and really bad Cardinals team. Shanahan pretty much downplayed everything other than the idea that it doesn't look like they're going to have any big time injuries. So I guess that would be the first real good news coming out of this is they look like they're going to be headed into the playoffs, hosting the first game either against Seattle or Green Bay with a pretty strong roster here.
Yeah, I mean that game went about as well as could be expected. That was the script you would have wanted, that you get up big and then you're able to kind of coast in the fourth quarter and just get your guys out of there and move on. So I mean that is great news. That we just about everywhere you look, defensive line, running back, those places that have been question marks throughout the season, it looks like we're going to be at as full of strength as we've been at any point during the season. So that's that's great timing.
All right. So this is from Matt Mayoko, putting it up here for video watchers, and I'll read it for the audio listeners. So the Seahawks beat the Rams in overtime. There's some choice calls for the Seahawks in that game, by the way. And so the Lions are officially eliminated from the playoffs. The Packers play the Lions tonight on Sunday Night Football. And if the Packers win, Aaron Rodgers will come into town next week as the 7th seed. If the Lions somehow play spoiler, even though they have nothing on the line as far as playoff implications, the Seahawks will play the 49ers in Santa Clara. So I guess the first question for you is, who would you rather play, Green Bay or Seattle?
I think for several reasons, Seattle. I don't really do like woo-woo kind of stuff, but they were the 1 seed 2 years in a row, and we kicked their cans. The Packers I'm speaking of, and it just seems kind of weird that they would get hot at the end of the year, and then we're here we are facing them again in the playoffs. I don't like that. I don't like the matchup with the style of play with them running the ball just so effectively outside and inside with Dillon and Jones, and then pot shotting over the top with Watson and Dobbs. I don't want any part of that. If I had a choice, I think we could beat them because defensively they are rather suspect. But again, that offense, it's a concern. So I would, if you let me hand pick, it would be Seattle. But if it is the Packers, by the end of the night, I'll have convinced myself we're going to beat them by 2 touchdowns. So,
so yeah, there's some interesting parallels. If you reverse the teams over the years, last year we had to go into Wisconsin in the snow and upset them. They were the 1 seed. And this year it would be sort of the flip. And I'm with you. I have now these are choice words on my end, but last year after they beat Rodgers, I was like, he had beat us so often over the years that he finally looked like a human being playing against the Niners last year. And so that's sort of how I feel about him today, is that he's way more human than he's ever been. And we saw the same thing with Brady when Tampa Bay came into town. But still, I would rather go into it with Geno Smith, who has never really been able to guide a team into the playoffs before. So the similarities between him, even though he is a vet, but just having those early reps in the playoffs and Brock having his early reps in the playoffs, it feels a little bit better. But yeah, man, I think Green Bay coming in hot. If they win tonight, I think it'd be 5 in a row. So something like that. So yeah, probably they'll probably win this game, I'm assuming, and we'll probably face them because if anything, I think Aaron Rodgers understands, sort of the getting into the playoffs better than anybody. Now, successfully as far as in the playoffs, he has one Super Bowl win. But I would say if you were to run his career back again, there are probably some moments there where fans go, you know what? He probably should have won that game. He probably should have won that game. They should have been in the Super Bowl more than just that, that one win. So I don't think he's the ultimate playoff winner, but getting to the playoffs has definitely been he's been great at doing that. Okay, so that's the NFC side, and we'll just quickly look at the AFC side because that's all figured out. The AFC side has Bills and Dolphins. They're going to play for a third time. If the Niners and the Seahawks play again, Niners and Seahawks would play again for a third time. Niners have 2 wins, though, so there's always this adage about beating a team 3 times in a row. So Field Yates got this wrong. He put the Bengals against the Bengals. So I screenshot the wrong one. And then Jaguars against Chargers. Wait, so this is Bengals against who? Let's see if I can. I'll find it while we're talking. But you know what I was thinking about? All three, those top 3 teams in the AFC are all beasts, right? The Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals. They're all beasts. But I think I would rather play the Bengals out of any of those teams.
Absolutely.
Because the mere fact that Burrows is not the runner that those other 2 guys are. And but all 3 really good teams, and it's going to be a fun playoff here. What do you think about this super wild card? They started this last year, but the second year of the super wild card where only 2 teams, the best team in the AFC and the best team in the NFC, get the bye.
Well, it sucks for us this year, obviously.
Ravens at the Bengals, by the way. That's the one that he messed up.
So yeah, because obviously we'd have the bye if it was the old system.
Yes.
But it makes for that first weekend of the playoffs is really exciting. I think I heard on the Football Night in America that last year every game was like a 1-score game going in to the end of towards the end of the fourth quarter. So it was for all intent and purpose exciting football down to the wire in all the games, which is a good thing. And I think it bodes well for that this year, because everybody is so well, maybe not at the top of the teams you mentioned, like the Bengals and the Bills, but I know on our side of the bracket there isn't much separating any of those teams. You could put them all in a hat, and it wouldn't surprise me literally with the NFC draw. None of the teams, if you told me today that the Packers would make it to the NFC Championship game, it would suck because obviously I'm a Niner fan, but it wouldn't shock me because I think my unofficial power ratings would have them right up there with us as the top 2 teams in the NFC over the past 4 weeks. So I think it's going to be a knockdown, drag out, and I don't believe in the Vikings at all, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants gave them a run. So I just think it's going to be kind of a free-for-all, and nothing that would happen next weekend would surprise me at all. If you told me that all of the lower seeds won, I wouldn't be shocked. So it should make for good football.
So the way that the NFC shakes out is Eagles take top seed. They kind of struggled in these last few weeks. Now, some of that is obviously health with their quarterback with QB1. And they didn't they took care of business today. They didn't impressively beat the Giants waste them away, but it was the Giants had to come back a little bit to make that game close.
They were playing against the Giants like practice squad, so right. I mean that has to be factored in.
Yes.
But yeah, they did. They righted the ship, which is, and we saw that Hurts is at least serviceable.
So we get the number 2 spot. Vikings are number 3. We had the same record as the Vikings, but we had the tiebreaker. The Bucks going into this playoff at 8-9 are the number 4 seed. And the Dallas Cowboys are the 5th seed. And then the Giants are the 6th seed. And so, like we said, the Seahawks and the Packers are playing for that 7th spot. So there's going to be a lot of white knuckle watching tonight for the Seahawks. All right, so let's go over the game. And I wanted to click on. Hang on one second. Here we go. All right, so I wanted to click on my my 3 main points, and let's start with this was a playoff week dress rehearsal game for us. The Niners wanted to win the game, but they also, and I am assuming that Shanahan specifically made it so that the offense looked very vanilla. There weren't many tricks in this game. There was a reverse to Debo. I want to say there was an inside run somewhere that was kind of like a surprise. But other than that, it was just straightforward football. And I fully expected that. I didn't think the Niners really didn't want to show anything. They probably felt, just talent for talent, they were going to be able to beat the Cardinals no matter what. But, there were a couple of shaky moments to start if you want to get nitpicky. The secondary kind of gave up a big play to start the game again, just like last week. But then what happens when it's all said and done? They got 3 picks, 2 of them by Gibson. And, I saw a quote where he said this is the most fun that he's ever had playing football. So it's really cool to see somebody who, the NFL in of itself is just, it's so hard on players unless you're a star quarterback post the year, 30th year of your birth, right? And he comes in at 32 years old and he's able to start for, arguably the best defense in the league. So it's good for him to see that.
He was sitting at home.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy that such a good player was, for all intent and purpose, out of football.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had Brock Purdy start 5. Now, I wanted to get your opinion. I thought he made some really strong reads. Some of that to me was that first read was getting open, so he was able to get the ball out. But when he didn't have that first or second read, the offensive line wasn't able to hold the pocket very well. And he took some bad sacks, if you want to nitpick. Some that probably he didn't need to take. He could have thrown the ball away, but he was trying to create plays with his legs, and then he's getting chased down by linebackers who are faster than him. So ultimately, how would you grade young Brock Purdy today?
I'm always grading young Brock on a curve, so I'm gonna say B- C+, because he did have several really shaky moments. And again, it's gonna sound like we're nitpicking, but there were plays that they were bad plays. He had several like bad plays. He missed a couple throws, and like you say, several of those sacks were just plays, especially he was out of the pocket. I mean, and literally he could have just threw the ball down at his feet and killed the play. But I've said that all this week in my defense of some of our defensive backs, and I'll say it again today about Brock, that I chalk it up to the things. One of the things we love about him is extending the play and making a play and trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Got him in trouble. So I mean, I find it hard to be critical of them because I'm not one who plays the result. It's all about the process, and that is he's made several plays this year along those lines, and it's going to go bad sometimes. So I mean, you kind of have to take the good with the bad, but I also can acknowledge that I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They were bad plays.
Yeah.
So again, it's just the growth and development of a young quarterback, and I'm sure Kyle, you love the fact that you're in it's all in all a low risk situation in that the game is pretty much in hand, so you can make those mistakes, and now but you also in a win you can go back and chew their ass a bit, and coach him hard, which apparently he doesn't have a problem with, which is good. I mean, it will give him something to kind of keep him grounded, which with Purdy mania is something that that's a real thing.
Yeah.
You have to be able to go in there and chew his ass a little bit and let him know that this is you're still a work in progress and you don't have it all figured out, and these are some things that you messed up, and you need to clean up and do better, because the playoffs are a whole different ball game. So I think all in all it was good. But like I said, okay, I'll give him a B minus, strong B minus.
And that's the relationship that a lot of strong head coaches with star players have. I believe that was like the Belichick Brady relationship, right? Like, if I could chew you out, then nobody can complain about being chewed out. I think
Right.
it was Popovich and Duncan maybe was the other one that I was thinking of, where, if I can give you the harsh criticism, then the players who are worse than you cannot complain about the same criticism, which is awesome if you have the star player who's got that mental toughness and understands the game, understands that this is just making your team better. So, nobody's harder on Brock than Shanahan. We can grade him, but Shanahan's going to be the hardest on him. Shanahan expects perfect, right? And so his quote was, Brock did some good things, had some plays he missed too. He's playing solid. Shanahan's not going to give us any adjectives in there. That's not his style. But he's not gonna put this star player thing in this guy's head when he needs the guy who's hungry, who's a 7th rounder, who's playing for his next spot. He needs that guy. He doesn't need the guy who's buying into the hype. And so he's going to coach him like you said he is.
And don't worry, there are plenty of people who will pump Brock's ego up if that is what he wants to indulge in. There are no shortage of those people around with the Montana comparisons and the like. So yeah, that it's a good thing to have that he has that balance, and he seems like a really level-headed kid. He says all the right things, but I know even the best of us sometimes have problems with their ego and confidence. So it's that it's a good thing to have someone in your corner who can shoot straight with you and tell you what it really is. So I think that bodes well for us going forward.
Shout out Shelvin. Our brother Shelvin is watching. He said bonehead sacks. He has shown in the past that he could escape from those, but not today. And I wanted to share Shelvin's comment because my worry is that in a week 17, week 18 games against the Raiders and the Cardinals, where it doesn't really matter, those situations where he's rolling out or where he's kind of running against the grain, going to his left and throwing against the body in the playoffs, those scenarios could really bite you because the teams are going to be revved up. Throws that he thinks that he can maybe make in week 17, week 18 are probably not going to be there. And it just gives these defensive coordinators more information about some of his tendencies. And if I'm a defensive coordinator, what I'm telling my defensive line is when he rolls out like that, like, yeah, you should try and chase him down, but he also kind of leaves the ball out there a little bit. And I'm slapping that ball away.
Play the ball, tackle the ball.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my thought. Like, I think Brock is playing, way better than I ever thought he could play if he had to play in games this year. And we even go back to the beginning of the season when Shanahan kept Purdy and he cut Nate. And that was kind of a surprise. But we had heard that, this Purdy kid is doing really well, but I still didn't think that he was going to make the team over someone who had been in the system for a couple years
and had got guaranteed money. That was what I kept leaning on, was the fact that, they guaranteed Nate his money. So usually you can follow the money, and I thought that Brock would end up on the practice squad, but apparently they saw enough, more than I did, to think that he could be number 2, then 3 once that whole thing went down. But so clearly they had a lot of confidence in him, because those are two things that go hand in hand. They cut Nate, and then up until, according to both John and Kyle, up until the week that it happened, none of them believed that they'd be able to get Jimmy back on a $6 million contract.
Yeah.
Everybody assumed that he was gone until he wasn't. So clearly, I say that to say that clearly they believed in him, because if Jimmy decides he wants to play in Washington, Brock Purdy is QB2 from week 1. So clearly this is not like revisionist history, that they have had a belief in him.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the thing going into next year now, I don't want to look too much ahead because we have some playoffs coming up, and this is really the best time of the season if your team is really good. But going into next season, if Brock continue, I think anything short of getting dusted this upcoming weekend, I think he and Trey go in as co-number ones, and it's whoever plays the best is going to get that spot. But if Brock kind of lays an egg in the playoffs, then maybe that changes things. But he's created an opportunity for himself to go into camp next year as possibly the co-number 1 quarterback. And look, if he wins the Super Bowl, then Trey's got to be number 2, at least going into the off season and into camp.
I guess, but I continue to say you follow the money and you follow the pedigree, and I believe that he's going to have to beat out Trey, or Trey is going to have to shit the bed not to get the shot. I mean, you have so much invested in him, and you look at, in my opinion, you look at the history of that position, and that dude, the QB2 dude, the 262 pick dude, that dude is rarely ever tabbed as the face of the franchise. No one has been able to show me a situation where that is the case. So,
well, we mentioned Kurt Warner is really the only one I can think about. But okay, so here's the here's a different angle though. Knowing the 49ers being the team that is the Parag, the salary cap expert, right? They have they've had Parag for a while now, and he is able to figure out how to get these guys under contract, and they haven't had to trade too many of them, Buckner being one of them that they did have to trade. But how much money, if you're going to pay Bosa next year, having a quarterback who makes less than $1 million helps that scenario. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to trade Trey. We're looking way into the future, but the fact that Brock makes less than $1 million is actually meaningful to a team who's going to have to sign one player next year specifically to giant money. So that's the only thing that's in the back of my head about Trey. But the other thing about it is they can also bring Trey along slowly. Whereas if Brock was terrible, then you're in a little bit of a situation where Trey better be healthy next year, right? So, okay, let's talk about some of the other things that happened in this game. George Kittle's a red zone monster. Now, Shanahan said he was the first option on both end zone touchdowns, which makes me wonder a little bit on how you defend the Niners in the red zone, because let's say that Debo and CMC are the players that scare the defense most. Those are the players that you kind of prioritize. Everywhere those guys go, you need to circle them and watch them. That helps George in this scenario, because in previous years when he was racking up a lot of the yards, he was the number one priority. So he was getting the double teams, he was getting the chips and everything. And you saw today, he had slow linebackers on one-on-one coverage with him. He was roaming in the back of the end zone just with one defender. So him being the third option, and maybe in some cases even the fourth option, with Ayuk playing so well, like, that has to help this relationship that Purdy has in finding Kittle. And I imagine because of that, he's been so open and they're utilizing that. Maybe that was the only thing that maybe Shanahan gave away a little bit today, is like, oh, like, we're gonna sneak Kittle in these spots because people aren't paying as close attention to him as they had in the past.
Yes. And I can't wait to get with my little coaching consultant that I kind of go over tape with, that, because what I saw that I found was interesting was there were several times and several formations where, for all intent and purpose, CMC and Debo were interchangeable, which is gotta be scary for a defense. You anywhere that you, from the X to the running back, those guys can line up at any position at any time, and when you put them on the field together, I mean, who do you key on? I mean, and like, to your point, that makes it easy for a guy like George or Ayuk or Jennings to just kind of slide under the radar. Juice. Yeah. I mean, they're just, again, it's an embarrassment of riches that Kyle has to work with. And like you say, it was kind of vanilla, but you look on the other side of the field, which I found interesting, because Cliff was all the way in his bag today. He dumped it all out on the sideline and was just like rifling through things to throw at us. So, it'll be interesting to see once we get it, now that we're in the playoffs, that Kyle, with Kyle not having really anything to to hold back on, that to see what he unleashes on next week's opponent should be. I know that their defensive staff is not going to sleep much next week, I would imagine, because it is a frightful thing. Because, I mean, both of those guys, CMC and Debo, and like George, when they get the ball in their hands, they are just menaces. I mean, it's, CMC, I knew he was a good player when he got here, but I did not realize he was as fast as he is. He gets the ball and he's like a jet. It's really amazing to see. And Debo is different. I mean, he'll stiff arm you. I mean, so he's strong and fast. So, I mean, and then George is kind of that way too. He's a matchup nightmare. You try to put a DB on him and he's just going to big boy that guy. And you try to put a linebacker on him, he's just not fast enough. He's just not, he is a matchup nightmare, and he has really been a revelation again. He's back to 2019 George, with his level of production over the past 3 or 4 weeks.
All right, so Shelvin has another question, or he didn't have a question the first time, but he had more of a statement. But his question is, has the offense changed with Brock under center? For Kittle, seems like he's been more of a target with Brock instead of being a blocker with Jimmy. So to me, two things have changed. One is CMC is fully that they've figured out how to fully unleash him, and two, Debo being out, and then now being back, I think just changes things because if we go back to last year's playoffs, like he was the man. And I think he's probably still either 1 or 1A, depending on CMC. And I think that is why that Kittle has just been the guy. Like they are utilized. Like Shanahan is almost utilizing his weapons as kind of like, okay, like here's what the defense is going to do. They're gonna pay attention to this. They're going to pay attention to this, and Kittle's going to be wide open. So thus now Kittle is the number one option on this play. I think that's what's happening. But it's been really fun to watch. Now, Rod, we're gonna go back a little bit here because I was trying to think of this. The best offense in 49ers history, just in a sort of racking up of yards and points, might be 1994. And that's not even a Montana offense. That's a young to Jerry Rice. That is Brent Jones. That is John Taylor. That is Ricky Waters. That is bar none. And the nickname of that offense was so many weapons. Like they just had so many weapons, and then you can flank Dion and just let him run as fast as he can down the sideline. This offense, I think, is the most explosive since that 1994 offense. Even the two Super Bowl teams the 49ers had where they lost, the offenses, I don't think, had this much firepower. And I think this is really the best offense since 94, just when it comes to talent on the offensive side of the ball.
I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, I would agree. It's an embarrassment of riches, and I'd like to take a shot at Shelvin's comment or question.
Yeah, I'll put it back up.
And Kyle mentioned it, and I've been saying it for years that George, particularly down the seam, has always been there. Brock more so than Jimmy, and this is not bashing Jimmy. Just he is more willing to throw the ball downfield than Jimmy is. So those routes that Kittle is running, he's been running those routes. Jimmy, was so focused on getting the ball out of his hand that he wasn't even looking. And Brock clearly has no problem, waiting for him to uncover and going there. And that is just another subtle difference that has made this offense even more, because the offense had a huge uptick in efficiency. If you look at the EPA numbers, when CMC got here, even with Jimmy, but once Brock has taken over, it's bumped up even more. And part of it clearly is his mobility and being able to move and get out of the pocket. But the other is his willingness to chuck it downfield, which has, I think, more so than anybody. I mean, Ayuk has, and Jennings has benefited, but I don't think anybody has benefited more than George, especially over the past 3 or 4 weeks. He has just been on fire.
So Shanahan wanted 200 yards rushing. They got 169. And let's get to the next part of this chat, because I wanted to give some folks their flowers for the seasons that they've had. But before we do that, I just wanted to shout out Elijah Mitchell, who has had a horrific season when it has come to injuries. And he comes back in week 18. He goes 5 carries, 55 yards, and 2 TDs, and looks explosive. and looks like the perfect complement to CMC. If you were to like put together what kind of running back you want next to CMC, who's just like read the block or read the hole, hit the turbo boost and boom, you're gone. And Elijah is more like hit the hole and the first guy's not going to tackle me. And the second guy might tackle me, and then it's going to take the third guy to bring me down. Like, he seems to be the perfect complement to CMC. So, again, when we're talking about this embarrassment of riches or so many weapons or whatever, what'd you think about Mitchell today?
Spoiler alert, he's on my top 3.
Okay, there we go.
So, yeah, he looked amazing. And he is a perfect combination of speed and power. I mean, to not be a very big guy, he packs a wallop. I mean, it, like you just said, it rarely does the first guy take him down. And then once he can get ahead of steam, I mean, he can scoot. So I mean, 4.37 in the combine tells you all you need to know about his speed. So yeah, it is. I mean, to be able to spot a guy like that, it's always interesting. Though you can tell CMC does not like to be on the sideline. Anytime he is out, he is like chomping at the bit to get back out there. Which, I mean, you love to see that. I mean, you love to see a guy that you talk about, well, is Kyle overusing him? Well, it's not because he's tapping out, because he wants to be out there, it seems, on every snap. But to that kind of 1-2 punch, and then the young boy JP is no joke either. So I am really excited about how Kyle decides to deploy those guys, because I remember the first time Mitchell came back, there were several sets where he had them both out there, which is interesting because with CMC being able to play anywhere from the running back out to the X just makes the offense even more. You got off if you have CMC, Mitchell, and Debo on the field. I mean, it's just, as you going back to your last point, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
The amount of talent and speed that they can put, that Kyle can put out there, for one snap is really, there aren't many teams in the league that can put that kind of talent out there now. Kansas City, I don't know if their talent is as good, but Mahomes kind of is like a force multiplier, and he makes his guys a little better than they might actually be. But that's not the case here. It's clearly, I love Brock, and people want to say 5-0 with Brock start, and that's fine. You can give him his credit, but it's CMC who really changed the tenor of this offense completely with his arrival, I believe.
Yeah, you can go back in the archives of this show, and we said pretty much from the day that that they got him, maybe not that day, maybe the next week, because I think they got him in the Kansas City game, right? And that was that was bad times. But we both said, like, look, this guy should make Jimmy so much better, because Jimmy likes to get the ball out so quickly and to have a safety valve just right there. And that's what they were starting to do. But now it's a whole different story with Brock, because Brock can keep the ball a little bit longer and he's not worried about getting sacked as much as Jimmy was. Okay, so let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. He finally goes over that 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career. And you could see the smile on his face when he was doing the interviews. He was very happy and very proud for him. Obviously, someone who has consistently been in Shanahan's doghouse, even sort of this season. Like last week, when they were talking about Ayuk's game, Shanahan was so hard on him. And the Robert Smith, who was doing the color commentary in today's game, he said he thinks that Shanahan is harder on Ayuk just because that was Shanahan's position when he was playing football. so he's like harder on that position. But I don't know. I don't really hear too many negative things about Debo from Shanahan. But yeah, so great to see Ayuk get his 1,000. He almost had a Devontae Adams like catch today. It hit the ground. He almost had a diving catch. Big plays. He also has really good chemistry with Brock after picking up the chemistry with Jimmy this year. So overall, great season for him. I just wanted to shout out him. The other person, Bosa, gets 1 sack, and I believe he is still 1 sack short of Aldon Smith's record for sacks in a season. So I don't know. He's got something to shoot for next year. Like that's going to be a number, or that 20, right? That 20 mark is kind of the elusive number here. So those marks were hit, and I think because Dre did not play today, Fred Warner overtook the team lead for tackles. He had 8. But you know who had the most tackles today?
Al-Shaair, didn't he?
Azeez, he did. He had the most tackles today. He had 10 and 4 solos, but 10 combined tackles. So those were just some numbers for some of those guys, and it was good to see. Now, before we get to our player of the game, Nick has got to be defensive player for the 49ers of the season. Who would offensive player of the season for the team be?
Well, I could cop out and say Trent. But I won't do that. I think it would have to be CMC. I'm going to go CMC.
That's who I would pick as well. Though I think you could argue, especially with the last 5 games, because George has had 7 touchdowns in the last 5 games, you could argue George. And just for overall consistency, you could even argue Ayuk, because Debo had a very inconsistent season because of injuries, and also he had a very slow start to the season. Shanahan was putting him in the backfield a lot, and they weren't getting anything. So yeah, I think but I think I would agree with you. I think I would say CMC as well, because he was really the shock to that offense that they needed when he was brought in, and I think he would obviously get my vote as like most valuable offensive player, because just gave them so many different things that they could do. But yeah, I was just thinking about that while I was watching that game, going like, man, I think it'd have to be Christian, but it's not like he's got these like super gaudy numbers, right? He's just enables them to do so many different things.
I think so. I mean, it's a worn out analogy, and it probably doesn't fit as well to Christian as it does to Nick, but it's the Steph Curry effect. He really, his presence has really changed the way everybody else is able to interact with the offense. It takes pressure off of Debo, because it was clear before he got here that all eyes were on him, and Kyle felt the need to, force feed him the ball, and it wasn't working nearly as well as it was, as it did last season. So it was problematic. But now that frees him up, because just based on what we've seen, Christian is the focal point now. Debo is still 1B, because he's still an explosive weapon, and his lack of production, I think, has more to do with just the missed time and injuries than him not, because when he's out there, it's clear, like he showed today, he is still a force when he gets the ball in his hands, and something that other teams are going to have to reckon with as we move forward. But My only hesitation with Christian was the fact that, the number of games played, but I mean, his impact is he's just been so impactful to me that it's just it's a no-brainer that he's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about today's player of the game. I'll let you. Why don't we do this? We'll both give our third and second, and we'll leave the first. And I just want to see if we have the same first, which is my thing. But why don't you give your third and second, and then save it, and then I'll give my third and second, and then we'll see if we got the same number one.
Fred was my third, and based solely on that drop that he had that play where he dropped on Hollywood Brown. And I mean, there's not another, I'm going to say, there's not another linebacker, all due respect to Shaq Leonard, there's not another linebacker in the league that drops 20 yards downfield to affect the throw against such a fast player as Hollywood Brown. So he had good tackle numbers, but as you mentioned, Al-Shaair had more tackles, but he made my list just based on that one play. Number two is, which is gonna kind of tip things, is CMC. I mean, he was a first down monster as he normally is. He scored, but yeah, he had a great game.
All right, so my number three is CMC. And my number two is Gibson. 2 passes defended, 2 interceptions. So who does that leave your number one?
My number one was Eli.
Okay, there you go. And my number one was George. So the reason why I did that is because there wasn't like a surefire person. So it just shows you a little bit and how differently we were watching the same game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Eli was awesome with the 2 touchdowns. Kittle
in limited snaps, obviously, right. But yeah, the 2 touchdowns kind of swayed it for me, and he had that gaudy per carry average, which I'm kind of, I like shiny things.
Yeah, 37-yard run down the sidelines.
Yeah, he looked really good,
and so
and you can't argue George. I mean, yeah, come on, yeah. George is equally as deserving.
And they took away one of those touchdowns from Mason, which I don't know. I guess it was close enough to reverse, but it was really close.
Yeah, and it was a tough run.
Yeah,
overarching. It was a very good run. Whether or not his knee hit before he reached the ball, okay, I guess that could go either way, but it was a hell of a run either way.
That guy runs hard. We got to see TDP a little bit today, which was nice to see. You could see why
that dude. I really feel bad for that dude. He has really. I mean, for all the talk, they were really talking him up in training camp, and he looked good. And then he got the ankle, and JP has just kind of, surpassed him.
And also because they play special teams.
That's true. That's true. But it's their careers are just starting. But I look back at it and I still say I know that was a bone of contention amongst the faithful, that we are much better served with those guys getting those reps than Jeff Wilson getting them.
Sure.
I
think your analysis on that move comes out correctly based on what happened, because they have 4 established. Technically I would say you have 3 guys. If Jordan Mason had to come in and play ball, we've seen enough of him to where we're not going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with this run game? We know what he's going to do. He's going to run hard.
Yeah.
And he's going to pick up yards, and he's going to fit pretty much right in. And
he's got a nice little burst. He runs hard. I mean, he's really good, and you can see TDP's talent. I mean, so I it's not like I don't think this is that this is a Trey Sermon type situation.
Right.
Clearly, I mean, he will be a player, I believe.
But essentially, as it comes out, my main worry about trading Jeff Wilson was that these guys get hurt, and Eli literally gets hurt. But it didn't affect them because they have the depth, and the depth is good. So it turned out that Wilson trade was fine. Okay, so let's talk about the last thing here, which is just we started with this, and we'll kind of end with this. There's going to be a game next week. We don't know the time. We don't know the day. I would prefer Sunday, but I know what I prefer does not matter at all. The fact that the Niners are well rested, I'm not scared. I'm not bothered if they do play Saturday. And I don't imagine they'll play Monday night, but who knows? There is going to be a Monday night game next week.
Yeah. It would not shock me if it ends up being the Packers. If it's Monday night, it wouldn't, A-Rod is prime time. So, that wouldn't, and that I wouldn't be mad at that. I mean, if we could get that extra day, I doubt that we would be like an early game on Saturday. So, I mean, I guess we could, but I just think that, maybe if it's the Seahawks, they'll give us a crap spot. But because the expectation would be in the PDF numbers. I was looking on the Football Night in America, the PFF prediction numbers bear that out, that if it's the Seahawks, they figure they're going to get boat raced. And maybe so, but we're smart enough as Niner fans to know that it's kind of a rivalry game. So you just kind of, I think we're better than them, but
Pete he's still Pete against the Niners, no matter what.
Chewing that gosh darn gum. So that I would not, I wouldn't count that as a walkover. If that were to come to pass. What
do you think about Dallas and Tampa Bay?
I was really, really, really 3 times really disappointed with the Cowboys, because they were kind of like my only hope. I was hoping, not that I'm scared of the Philadelphia Eagles. I was hoping that the Cowboys would be able to go into Philly and knock off the Eagles so that we would get them here in the championship. That was what I was hoping.
Yeah.
But if today's performance was any indication, they're going to have, let's just put it this way. I hope it's not a 1-score game halfway through the fourth quarter. Because that, to me, Tampa Bay is a paper champion. But if you give that dude one drive to beat you in the fourth quarter, I don't know. How do you bet against him? How do you bet against Tom Brady?
And here's the other thing. Even though the Cowboys have 4 more wins than Tampa, the game is in Tampa.
Yeah. And that's crazy. That they have a losing record and they get a home game, which is it's clearly a scheduling quirk, but it would not surprise me if they beat the Cowboys. I have no faith that they can go beyond that, do anything beyond that. But it would not shock me, because the Cowboys looked awful today.
Yeah.
They really looked bad. And there was they played their guys for all intent and purpose. They thought they were playing for the division and the number 1 seed. So you can't tell me that they took the Commandos lightly. They just played poorly, which is the last thing you want heading into the playoffs. You don't want to have one of your worst performances heading into the playoffs, and they did today.
Yeah. I mean, there are some. If the Niners play the Packers, I think that is up there with the top games of the week. But the other ones would be Dolphins Bills, obviously because of how they played each other during the season. Ravens Bengals because it's interdivision. And
Lamar those games, probably comes back, and
Lamar will be back. And then Cowboys Bucks just because it's Tom Brady, right? Like,
and the Cowboys,
and it's right. The Cowboys plus it's Tom Brady, so that the NFL would probably see that just by itself as the top game, just because Dallas is the biggest fan base in all the NFL. So, they created their own Sweet 16, like the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And that is super wild card weekend. So it's going to be a blast next week. We'll be back whenever the Niners play. We'll be back later that day. So keep an eye out on the schedule. We'll do some tweets out on the BSPN show's Twitter handle as far as letting folks know when that is going to happen. But yeah, this has been such a fun season, and I don't know. I feel like we're good luck. Like, just us doing this podcast, and then they go and they win 9 in a row, or what is it, 10 in a row? How many games do they win? 10 in a row. After starting 3 and 4.
The fact that they finished. So what was it? Was it 13 and 4?
Yeah, that was the final record.
Like you say, at 3 and 4, there was no way we were gonna win 13 games. No way. But wow, this has been an amazing season, and I don't know, it didn't. I was super bummed after the second game of the season.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
It was not,
No, I think it was the third game. Third game is when they lost to Denver, right?
Yeah, but the second game is when we lost Trey.
Oh, right. We lost him in the beginning, even though they won that game because Jimmy came in. Yeah, right.
But
right.
So to think that we would be sitting here at 13 and 4 with losing him and then losing Jimmy is just, I mean, it's been a wild year. The trade, I mean, it's just been, the twists and turns have been awesome, and it's been great to be here with you, kind of talking about and documenting it.
Yeah, no, it's a blast. And so Shelvin wants me to figure out a way to join a Facebook on a second account. The problem, Shelvin, is I'm the only admin, so I wouldn't even be able to add myself because I can't get back into the admin account. That's the problem. I have some people looking into it, and at some point, if this doesn't get any better, I think I'm just going to figure out Discord. I don't know if you've heard about Discord, but that's like another way that people are getting together. I know, I miss it. I'm just like, what am I doing during these games? I'm like flipping through Twitter and trying to figure out stuff, and I'm like, what would I be doing? Oh, I'd be chatting in our Facebook group about the game. So yeah, I miss it too. All right, so we'll be back next week, and keep an eye on Twitter and all that, and we'll put some stuff about when we're going to record next, because we don't know. Niners may play Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Probably not Monday, I would guess, but anyways.
I think you're right that if anybody has the inside track on Monday, it's Tampa and the Cowboys. Yeah. If I had to bet right now, that would be my bet, that they're Monday night.
Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's it for us. We'll be back next week after the first playoff game for the 49ers in the wild card round. For Rod, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.